Okay, Dave, you can go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. I am Dave Turpin, the president of the University of Alberta, and I would like to welcome each and every one of you to this virtual town hall meeting. Now, let me begin by saying that in light of recent events that have been occurring internationally, I recently released a statement indicating that the University of Alberta stands in solidarity against racism. We all have a lot of work to do to transform our communities here at the U of A and more broadly. We need to work to close the gaps of inequity, and we at the University of Alberta are committed to doing our part. Here at the U of A, we are working through a truly unprecedented time, and I simply cannot thank each and every one of you, all our students, faculty, and staff enough for the incredible work that you have done over the last 2.5 months. We are dealing with unprecedented budget cuts at the same time that we are managing a global pandemic. And I want to thank you for everything that you have done. It is important that we get together as a community once again to hear how we are dealing with these challenges. If the technology should fail us, please be patient. We have a number of backup plans in place in case one of us should lose our connectivity. Our plan for today's town hall is as follows. For the first 45 minutes or so, President-elect Bill Flanagan will speak about the future of the University of Alberta. Catherine Swindlehurst, our interim VP University Relations, will then moderate a question and answer session. And then we will move on to a brief update on our fall 2020 planning in light of COVID-19. And this will be led by our provost and our VP operations. As we enter this discussion, it's important to recognize that the University of Alberta is one of Canada's, and in fact the world's, leading universities. And we will continue to be so, playing a key role in building a better community, a better Canada, and a better world. In this period of unprecedented change, we actually have to take unprecedented actions. Over the past 4 years, we have developed a series of tools to help us. The first is we went to multi-year budgeting. The second thing we did is we built an activity-based budget model, which allows deans and others to get a sense of how their revenues will change if they alter enrollment or alter research activity. We spent a lot of time working to eliminate the structural deficit. And then we've engaged in a global benchmarking exercise with some of the best universities in the world to help us focus our efforts on minimizing administrative costs. These tools have put us in the position to deal with the unprecedented challenges we're facing today. We're also in a period of presidential transition. And since President-elect Bill Flanagan's appointment was announced 2.5 months ago, Bill and I have been interacting regularly. In addition, the entire leadership team at the university, the vice presidents and the deans have also been interacting regularly with Bill. I must say working with Bill is a delight, and he is an exceptional leader and is just the leader we need at the University of Alberta. It is now my very great pleasure to turn the floor over to President-elect Bill Flanagan to take us through his presentation and the rest of the town hall meeting. Bill, over to you.
Great, and thank you, Dave, for that introduction. And thank you all for joining today. I think we have several thousand people watching this online. And I just want to say first at the outset how thrilled I am to have the opportunity to take on the role of President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Alberta. It is, of course, a very challenging time for the university. but I really am thrilled to have the opportunity to join such a distinguished university. And as you may know, this is also a real homecoming for me. I was born in Edmonton and grew up in Stony Plain and in Lacombe. And both of my parents were school teachers and enormously proud graduates of the Faculty of Education at the University of Alberta. So I carry their legacy with me, a legacy of a lifetime committed to education, and also an understanding of the enormously important role that the University of Alberta has always played in the life of the province. Now, I have to say this was not how I had hoped to be introduced to the university community talking to my computer. I had envisioned a day or so to unpack my boxes and embarking on that 6-month listening tour that new presidents always do, an opportunity to engage deeply in the life of the university. But however, of course, COVID has changed all of our lives and really turned things upside down. And so I haven't had that opportunity to engage individually or in person with many members of the university community. One thing I have had the opportunity to do as our life has moved online is since the date of the announcement of my upcoming appointment, I've been engaging very extensively in a whole variety of university meetings, Board of Governors, GFC committee meetings, meeting with deans, VPs, and I just want to thank Dave and all of the members of the university staff who have been so welcoming and so generous with their time. So I have had an opportunity to really listen a great deal and learn a great deal about the university, although of course there's so much more that I need to do. And I just want to say at the outset of my presentation today, proposal for the University of Alberta for tomorrow, it is of course very unusual that an incoming president would be proposing something of this nature, indeed a month before I take on the job. But I don't think that we have the luxury of time. As Dave's mentioned, this is a real urgency is facing the university, and I'll speak to this more in my presentation. And it is a result of this urgency that I really feel is necessary that I throw myself headlong into this as quickly as possible. But I want to assure all members of the university community that I'm deeply committed to a process of ongoing consultation as we work toward the structural changes that I think are so important for the university going forward. And so I just wanted to say that what we were a bit concerned about potential technical glitches that were, as for all of us, we've been thrown into this online world. So what I did is earlier today, I taped the presentation. And so we're going to play the presentation now. And then I will join for a live Q&A with Catherine will be reviewing the questions that have been submitted. A number of questions have already been submitted, and please continue to submit your questions during the presentation. We'll try to answer as many of the questions as we can. And I just also wanted to emphasize that the website has been launched, the University of Alberta for Tomorrow, and this will be an ongoing process in which you can submit your comments and engage in this process of restructuring that is going to be so important to the future of the university. So now I will turn it over to the presentation, and then I will be back to address some of the questions that will arise. And thank you again. What I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about some of my thoughts I'm calling U of A for tomorrow. And I am aware, of course, of the enormous financial challenges facing the university, coupled, of course, with the additional challenges of the COVID pandemic. But what I would like to propose is a proposal of systemic reform that I think can help the university not only address its current funding crisis, but can put the university in a stable position to continue to build and enhance its delivery on its mission and vision. What I'm proposing, however, will require profound change. First, in how the faculties are organized. And second, how we think about professional and administrative services on campus, both central and within faculties, and how we can structure these services to best support the academic mission. And third, the university needs to think very carefully about how it uses and develops its assets. I believe that we can turn our current challenge into a strategic transformation of the university that will position it to thrive and go forward. In 5 years, I believe we can be better placed to deliver on our vision and mission. We can make even greater contributions to the public good, sustain our position as one of the top 100 global universities, and most importantly, build even stronger levels of community engagement, driving economic growth, innovation, and creativity in Alberta and beyond. Now, this is the scope of the challenge. And of course, you're all very familiar with the nature of this challenge. In this year alone, the university is facing a $110 million cut to its budget. In years 2 and 3, an additional $53 million. We're assuming an additional new tuition revenue. As you know, our tuition fees will be increasing. But with the COVID pandemic, the extent to which we will realize this additional tuition revenue is in question. So we're really looking at a funding crisis of at least $127 million over the next 3 years. It's hard not to overstate the nature of the challenge facing us. Here's the urgency. We're looking at a government grant that will be cut by 33% over the next 3 years. The university has already announced over 1,000 staff reductions in the next 2 years. What we're really doing here is we're taking these 1,000 staff reductions, and we have not yet had a chance to rethink how we structure work on campus. And instead, what we're asking our staff to do is to do the same amount of work in the same way, but with 1,000 fewer staff members. And this is simply an unsustainable load for our remaining staff. And there are potentially highly negative impacts on teaching and research. There's a risk that the quality of the student experience will decline. There's a risk of a reduced ability to attract and retain top students and faculty, which of course could affect our rankings. We could be faced with a diminished university with a significantly reduced ability to contribute to economic growth and to the advancement of the public good in Alberta and beyond. Now, I want to assure you that I did not take this job to manage as best I can the decline of a great university. Instead, I think we do have an alternative. And this is the alternative that I would like to present, what I'm calling the University of Alberta for Tomorrow, a vision for the next 2 years. First, I'm proposing that if we transform our organizational and academic structures, we could realize over $120 million in savings. And I'll talk a little bit more about the data that has gone into that estimate and why I think we can achieve that target. In 2 years, with a streamlined senior academic team of deans in place, we would be prepared to distinguish U of A as a global leader in innovation and entrepreneurship in higher education. With academic restructuring complete, we would be able to drive an unprecedented level of interdisciplinary teaching and research programs. And with more streamlined and efficient services, our staff would be even better equipped to help advance the university's core mission. And with rationalized and centralized services, we could provide enhanced and better coordinated level of services to our students, contributing to an improved student experience. And then once we had stabilized U of A's financial position, we would be in a position to, I believe, launch an ambitious program of new revenue generation, expanding existing programs and developing new ones that are highly responsive to student and employer demand. Now, this is a slide that I think, although we are in a challenging circumstance, I call this the slide, at least the sky is not falling. What we're looking at in the next 2 years, by 2022-23, this is an estimate of where the University of Alberta will place vis-a-vis its peers in Canada in terms of its total grant and tuition revenue per student. And you'll see that we remain in a very competitive position, about the middle of the pack. I mean, previously, we are among the best funded universities in the country, and no question that will diminish over the next 2 years. But what is important is to note that we remain in a highly competitive position. And I believe that we will be well positioned to seize opportunities for growth. And this is, of course, one of many opportunities for growth, but I think one that's particularly impressive. We're looking at a 25% increase in the numbers of students graduating from grade 12 over the next 4 to 5 years in Alberta. These students will be knocking at the door of the University of Alberta to benefit in the education that we're able to offer our students. This is a wonderful opportunity for us, should we choose to decide to expand our enrollment, which would of course lead to a whole new stream of revenue that we could invest in our teaching and research programs. So here's some of my ideas for the University of Alberta 2025. And again, I'm only throwing out ideas here. None of this is set in stone. What I really want to do is inspire people to raise our eyes above the current challenge that we're facing and the opportunities that may be available to us in the next 5 years. I've already discussed one of those, and that is the positive demographic trend. And also, Alberta has one of the lowest participation rates in post-secondary education in the country. U of A could take the lead and expand our enrollment to over 50,000 students, increase the participation rate in Alberta, and we could also explore cutting-edge online programs, reaching students not only across Alberta, but around the world. With major new investments, from expanded enrollment and new revenue generation, U of A would be in a position to be a global leader in technology-enhanced teaching and learning, with a dramatically expanded range of work-integrated learning opportunities, highly responsive to student demand. Our research impact and community engagement would never have been better, advancing economic growth and the public good in Alberta and beyond. We could secure our rank among the top 100 global universities. We would have an unprecedented ability to attract and retain talented students and faculty from around the world. And with these new revenue streams, we could dramatically reduce our dependence on government grants from almost 60% of our operating revenue in 17-18 to less than 40% in 2024-25. But how are we going to get there? How on earth could we save $120 million by embarking on a program of academic and administrative restructuring? Well, the data that we've collected over the past year, and what I'm proposing today is really work that the university has been working on for well over the past year. Working with a group called Uniforum, a group out of Australia started by an academic. And this is a global benchmarking initiative, and it's designed to advance effectiveness and the efficiency of administrative services at universities. And what we have done with Uniforum is that we have done a deep dive into how we structure work on campus, what's called activity collection, trying to get a sense of how we structure this work and have we structured it in a way that is most efficient. And in particular, Uniforum provides us with benchmarking data so we can compare the performance of the University of Alberta to key peer institutions in Australia, the UK, and in Canada. Now, the Australian universities have started this process well over 10 years ago, and they have demonstrated enormous success in driving savings by initiating these programs of restructuring. The UK has also, about the last 5 years, a number of leading UK universities have likewise embarked on a similar program of restructuring. This is fairly new to Canada. A number of Canadian universities, as you see listed there, are engaged in the Uniforum initiative, but I think there's an opportunity for the University of Alberta to really lead the way in exploring the potential of these benchmarking initiatives to drive strategic transformation at a Canadian university. So you'll see a number of Canadian members of the Uniforum group, and the data that we've collected were benchmarked against 52 peer institutions in Canada, UK, and Australia. So some very powerful data that tells us where we might be able to find efficiencies in how we operate the university. Now, we've been working with a consultancy group called the Nous Group. It's an international management consultancy group that has deep experience in higher education. Also, the Nous Group is very familiar with how to work with the Uniforum data that I mentioned. We're primarily interested in working with the Nous Group on this issue of organizational and system performance. And you'll see that the Nous Group is also operating in 10 locations around the world, 3 countries, and has had very significant experience working with a number of our international peers. You'll see these major universities in Australia, Monash, Sydney, and so forth, Queen Mary, University College. So we've got some very robust data that is supporting my claim that we could save up to $120 million with structural reform on campus. So we have a high level of organizational complexity on campus, and we know this from the data that we've collected. One interesting point is that similarly ranked universities, and here we are, the University of Alberta, the THE rankings, at about 140 in this particular ranking. And our research revenue is of $500 million a year. We will see that there's a number of universities in the UK and Australia with significantly lower amount of research income, yet rank significantly higher than the University of Alberta. What the no screws tells us is this suggests that if we reduce our administrative complexity, take those savings and redirect them back into our core mission, there's a potential for the University of Alberta to improve its rankings. We have a research income that should be placing us within the top 50. Another organizational complexity that constrains the university is the number of our faculty members who are involved in administration. 292 faculty members, 15% of our total faculty. We know from the uniform data that this is a much higher figure at U of A than peer institutions in particularly the UK and Australia. 25% of our small sections do not cover their direct costs, let alone the administrative costs. So some very high costs that, again, this data has brought to light. So here are some of the systemic disadvantages. We have 18 faculties. Our peer institutions that have demonstrated these savings typically have faculties between 6 to 10. We have excessive levels of management. There's a fragmentation of efforts, and we're leaving opportunities for benefits of scale on the table. We have many small courses with very low enrollments, which are very costly. We're investing a great deal in these small courses, but we're investing less in the student cohort experience. We also have high administrative costs that are diverting funds from the university's mission. Our services generally have low expertise. That is, what we're doing is we're asking many of our staff members to do a whole variety of tasks, rather than focusing and developing expertise on a smaller number of tasks, which of course can drive efficiencies. Poor process design, highly manual processes, high spend from suboptimal procurement practices. We also have a very large physical footprint, which is an enormous cost to the university. So here are some of the drivers of the organizational cost at the University of Alberta. 50% of our staff are administration. That is, they're not faculty. They're not teaching staff. This is a significantly higher percentage than at our peer institutions in Australia and in the UK. 43% of our admin staff are generalists. That is, they're doing a whole variety of different tasks. They're not focusing and developing expertise. And this is leading to further inefficiencies. There's a high level of duplicated services, inefficient manual processes, and so forth. Also, the enormously high maintenance and infrastructure costs driven by a footprint that is 50% larger than the Canadian comparators. So again, some very powerful data here. Compared to UK and Australian peers, U of A spends above average on facilities management. Significant gains to be made with efficiencies found here. External engagement, recruiting students, for example. General administration, IT, finance, research administration, HR. We're significantly spending more above average than the UK and Australian peers. Now, interestingly, our position is very similar to the other Canadian universities participating in the uniform data. So this tells us that the Canadian universities are trailing the UK and Australian universities. But as I said earlier, there's an opportunity for the University of Alberta to really lead the way for other Canadian institutions to follow. And other drivers of organizational cost. The most efficient universities centralize their transactional activities, including things like payroll, procurement, expense reimbursement. But at the University of Alberta, we know from the data that we've collected that only 56% of administrative operating costs are in the VP portfolios. That is, are centralized. And so we can see enormous gains could be made by centralizing more transactional activity at the University of Alberta, particularly when it comes to teaching admin, research, general administration, external engagement, and finance, and student support. And the academic realignment will ultimately support our mission and impact. Larger faculties, we know, spend 50% less to deliver administrative operations. And again, the data tells us this. Reducing the numbers of faculties at the University of Alberta by 50% could save up to $26 million in operational admin costs and $18 million in released academic capability. That is, the academics who would be returned to full-time teaching and research and be relieved of academic or administrative responsibilities. If the remaining faculties had the same efficiency as the Faculty of Science at the University of Alberta currently has, we could save over $100 million. And fewer faculties and departments would enable lower per student costs through the reduced duplication of functions, specialization of roles, automation, and fewer, better supported academic leaders, freeing the capacity of other academic leaders to return full-time to teaching and research. Now, again, the NOUS group has worked with a number of universities in Australia and the UK, and you see the time period where they have worked over the period of time and the savings that they have demonstrated to have achieved. So you'll see some very significant savings at major peer institutions in Australia and in the UK. What's important, however, to note is that our target for savings, if we look at the cuts we're facing in this 1 year, are significantly more than what these Australian and UK universities faced. And the time period in which we need to do this, 1 year, is significantly tighter than the time period at the other peer institutions. So the scale and speed at which we need to move is unprecedented. Now, here are the 4 work streams that we're proposing. First work stream would deal with administrative services. The savings could be in the range of $95 million. Now, this again will be looking at the administrative services both as central services and also services within each faculty and identifying opportunities for savings. There's enormous savings to be had with procurement, consolidation, space and facilities. This is reducing our footprint and the cost of our footprint. Again, substantial savings to be realized. And academic design is the numbers of faculties and departments that we have, examining that with a view to faculty rationalization. We could save up to $65 million, according to the data provided to us by Uniforum and NOUS. So ongoing benefits reporting will be a top priority. We need to regularly evaluate what we're doing. We need to measure what we're doing and empower leaders to deliver on these work streams. And we need to actively deliver these benefit realizations. And we need to adjust as appropriate as we move along. And the savings beyond the government cut, that is, if we are able to achieve savings even in excess of the amount of the cut that the university is facing, all of those savings would be reinvested back into the university's core mission. So we will track the budget spend, the active roles, the procurement spend, the total space footprint. All of this will be tracked and reported on a regular basis. Now, this is the governance structure that we're proposing for the University of Alberta for tomorrow. First, setting up a Service Excellence Transformation Steering Committee. The membership and will be chaired by the VP of Finance and Administration. This is the committee that will be looking at the larger administrative restructuring program. And then second, the provost will be leading the academic restructuring working group. The composition of the working group is still being determined, but here are the members, or the targeted members of the working group. The academic restructuring working group and SET will both report to the senior administration of the university, which will then bring the proposal to APC at GFC for approval at the General Faculties Council, and likewise approval at the Board of Governors. So the Service Excellence Transformation Initiative will be focused on examining business support functions, whether done centrally or in faculties, with a view to the redesign of these services, focusing on achieving economies of scale and specialization. And we'll also focus on the redesign of procurement practices, including consolidation of suppliers and strategic procurement framework. The Academic Restructuring Working Group will develop recommendations for structural change to the academic units. And this could include proposals to create, merge, reprofile faculties. And the process of this academic restructuring will be first to establish underlying principles and objectives. Second, a consultation and data gathering, assessment and design of structures, approvals at GFC and board, implementation for the spring. Now, this process will, of course, necessarily involve a broad process of consultation within the university, community, and the time frame is also very aggressive. Administrative transformation, procurement, space and facilities will take a little bit longer because, of course, it's costly to reduce our space. And here's the proposal for academic design. The project scope has to be pan-university, high-end, high-paced, and end-to-end. The scope of the cost reduction is unprecedented in the history of the university. The history of the university has been highly decentralized, but the urgency of the challenge means that we need to take a university-wide coordinated approach. The university needs to work together. Everything needs to be on the table. Everyone must be involved. There needs to be an end-to-end transformation, and the implementation must be high-paced. GFC and the board will play a critical role, actively engaged in the academic restructuring process with early and ongoing consultations. I'm asking all members of the university community to be open to different ways of working and operating, and to advise us on communication strategies for internal and external stakeholders. Communication and transparency will be key to the success of this initiative. And finally, of course, GFC will be asked, and the board will be asked, to approve the proposed final design of the academic restructuring. So immediate next steps are to set up the governance office, the SET program office, the academic restructuring working group, plan and launch university-wide communications, and scope the streams. And finally, in closing, I just want to say we also must be mindful of our commitments to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and truth and reconciliation in this transformation initiative. And for me, that means that we need to really keep our mind focused on an inclusive process of consultation, an inclusive process that includes all members of the university community. And likewise, we need to reflect on what the final academic leadership group will look like. This leadership group needs to reflect our ongoing commitment to EDI and truth and reconciliation. So thank you for listening. And now we will turn to questions. And I look forward to working with all of you as we work on the University of Alberta for tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Swindlehurst. I'm pleased to be with you to moderate the question period. We've received several questions ahead of the town hall. Thank you to everyone who submitted. If you wish to submit a question now, please use the link in the information below the live stream, and we will try to address it today. Let's get started. First question, how are you going to cut over $100 million from our operating budget, increase enrollment by 10,000 students, and still fulfill the teaching, research, and service mission of the university?
Thank you, Catherine. I realize that the scale of what I'm proposing is extraordinary, that we could achieve over $120 million in savings. As you know, we've already sustained an enormous cut to the university budget. I think the choice for us is we either take that cut and sprinkle it across the institution in a way that's not particularly strategic, that will be highly damaging to the university, or we seize the opportunity to ensure that that we address these budget cuts in a way that is strategic, that we rethink very carefully how we structure work on campus, that we find the efficiencies that we're able to achieve. And I know proposing additional students, and again, this is only a proposal, it would be the subject of a broad process of consultation within the university. But if we were to seize the opportunity to increase our enrollment, and again, I think it's an extraordinary opportunity for the university, this of course would mean very significant new net revenue for the university, all of which that we could reinvest back into our core teaching and research mission to ensure that these additional students that we might decide to bring to the University of Alberta would share in an outstanding learning experience. So although I know the scale of the challenge is enormous and one might be tempted to think it's not possible that we could generate savings of that amount, it's not possible that we could take on additional students, I actually think there is some extraordinary potential for us to engage in a strategic transformation that will stabilize the university's financial position and enable us to seize opportunities for growth and continue to play that important key role that the university has always played in driving economic growth, innovation, and creativity in Alberta and beyond.
Thanks, Bill. Given the current fiscal restraints, how is the university going to maintain an inclusive environment that supports and promotes diversity?
Great question. And as I said at the close of my presentation, I think it's very important that we affirm our ongoing commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and truth and reconciliation. No more important than in this process of, I admit, dramatic restructuring that I'm proposing for the university. Key to that will be a process of consultation that is inclusive of all of the diverse voices within our university community and beyond. It's very important that that process of consultation be meaningful and inclusive. And also, as we embark on this restructuring, we need to be asking ourselves continually the question, is the restructuring that we're proposing, is it advancing our commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, and truth and reconciliation within the university? And if it's not advancing that, well, then we need to rethink. But I do think that there's an opportunity for us to continue to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion, and an effective response to truth and reconciliation in a way that both addresses the enormous financial challenge facing the university and also seizes this strategic opportunity for us going forward.
So in the questions that came in prior to the town hall today, several people have asked about what might happen to specific faculties. What is your plan for reducing the number of faculty? What is the time frame? And how will these changes be rolled out?
Well, first, I just want to say that no decisions have been made. We're just in the process of launching the Academic Restructuring Working Group. And Steve, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on the work of that committee and how you envision that going forward.
Sure. So as Bill explained, ultimately these are decisions made by the General Faculty's Council and the Board of Governors. And so a key part of how we'll move forward is to make sure that we're able to engage those bodies throughout the process in consultation and discussion. We have established an academic restructuring working group. It's just getting going. We're still fleshing out some of the membership, but I see that body as being the group that is going to do the deep dive dig into data, look at different options, do the comparison between different jurisdictions, different institutions to explore models, and ultimately come back to lead some of the consultation and engage with our community to make sure that we do have a broad set of perspectives represented in what gets proposed to move forward. In terms of timelines, our clock is very, very tight on this. We need to demonstrate savings starting in this fiscal year that's already started. And so all of this work has to move incredibly quickly. So this committee and its work needs to get started immediately. And in going forward, we'll need to make sure that we are engaging regularly with our key governance bodies so that they're staying up and current with us.
Thanks. Those of us who interact directly with students as teachers, instructors, and staff, the frontline workers of the institution, are currently stretched beyond capacity. What mechanism will senior administration establish to hear from this large group directly, unfiltered through deans or union people? How will restructuring plans seek the voices of individuals who are on the front lines feeling unheard and misrepresented?
Thank you for that question. First, I just want to say that I know that the layoffs that the university has experienced and will continue to experience have been enormously challenging for the university community. Obviously, for the individuals affected, a tremendous loss. And also for the workers and the fellow staff who remain, a great sense of loss. That's of the departure of some of their colleagues. And I've had an opportunity to speak with some of the representative staff groups. And I just want to say that the sense of loss on campus and around the university is enormous. But a process of consultation as we go forward with our frontline workers is going to be absolutely key. As I mentioned in the presentation, transparency and consultation is going to be fundamental to the success of this initiative, and with all stakeholder groups on campus. None more important than our frontline workers. So of course, obviously we're working closely with the representative groups for frontline workers, but I also want to meet individually with frontline workers. And we'll have the opportunity to do additional town halls. And I also want to propose small group roundtables with groups of interested frontline workers. We may have to do this virtually, but it is an opportunity for me to speak directly with frontline workers. I do know how important support staff are to the success of delivering on the university's key mission of teaching and research. We simply can't do it without our support staff. And as I mentioned in the presentation, for us to expect our support staff to continue to do the same work, same amount of work in the same way with 1,000 fewer staff is simply unsustainable. Instead, I'm proposing a process of restructuring that I think could lead ultimately to more rewarding work opportunities for our frontline workers, more opportunities for them to specialize in expertise, and to drive the savings that will enable us to preserve jobs on campus, rather than simply sprinkle these costs or these cuts across campus in a way that is not strategic and not thoughtful and damaging to our core mission.
So here's a question that came in today. So how do we take care of our people in the process? How do we safeguard our values, our passion, our engagement through this process so we are better, not just on the fiscal side, but in our actions, our culture, and our sense of community?
That's a great question. And I think one key measure will be how we engage in this process of consultation. Do we come together as a university community and address head on some of the very, very large challenges facing the university? Do we do this in a way that is inclusive, that engages all members of the university community? Do we do this in a way that is transparent and engaged in ongoing and active communication and engagement of all key stakeholders? I think that if we commit ourselves to that, if we demonstrate that every step of the way, it will help to continue to build a very strong sense of community that is so vital to the success of the university. And I know that proposals of this nature will not succeed unless we're able to work together as a community. And as I said in the presentation, I'm asking everyone to be open, be open to new ideas of how we can structure work, how we can structure our campus life, so that we can drive these efficiencies that will stabilize our financial position and put the university in an even stronger position to deliver on its mission and vision.
I've got another question from today, which is, I applaud the commitment to interdisciplinary research and teaching. It is not clear to me, however, that our new budget model will enable us to realize that goal. Is there a plan to rejig the budget model to enable more interdisciplinary collaboration?
Certainly interdisciplinary is a key part of what we're proposing with the academic restructuring. Currently with 18 faculties, we've developed a number of silos across campus that are not conducive to building the interdisciplinary links that we're hoping to achieve. We're thinking that with a reduced numbers of faculty, there will be opportunities to continue to build on a lot of the excellent interdisciplinary work that's already ongoing on campus. So continuing to build those opportunities for interdisciplinary work, continuing to deepen our commitment to interdisciplinary teaching and research is really a core part of what we're proposing with the academic restructuring. Steve, I don't know if you had anything further you wanted to add on that point.
Just to say that one of the things that I think we'll definitely need to engage with the working group is the mechanisms by which interdisciplinary research and teaching occurs, and whether or not we can find better ways to reinforce and coordinate that interdisciplinary activity, whether that's through a modified approach around centers and institutes, or some other mechanism, and perhaps financial elements of this will be a key part of that. But I think there's going to be strong commitment for us to look at structurally what can we do that naturally supports interdisciplinary activities.
Catherine, I'm wondering if our time is up.
Maybe have time for one more question.
Okay, sure.
It seems that significant decisions have been made and announced before discussion and approval through academic governance processes. How will faculty members and ASHWA, as well as administrators and support staff, be involved in the planning and the governance processes going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I want to reassure all members of the university community that no significant decisions have been made. Well, I did make this presentation to GFC at an open meeting about a week ago, and a reporter from the Journal was attending, and he thought it was a great story, and he ran with it, and then it's led to a great deal of press as these things happen. But I don't want any of you reading this press to suggest to read into that any of these decisions have been made. As I've emphasized in the presentation and in my remarks today, this process of consultation with all universities, stakeholder groups, is going to be ongoing. It's going to be a very engaged process. It is one that we must ensure is transparent and engages in ongoing communication with all of the university community. Without that process of transparency and communication, the scale of the proposed changes that we're proposing will not succeed. So I just want to assure all members of the university community that I am committed to that process of consultation and that no major decisions will be made. And of course, that finally, particularly with respect to academic restructuring, all of those decisions will be taken to GFC for final approval, a body, of course, that is broadly representative of the university community. And likewise, these proposals will be taken to the board. So I think maybe that concludes our time for questions. And I just wanted to say again, given the technical limitations here, we've had to deal with written questions. We haven't been able, of course, my preference, of course, would have been to have a town hall where we could all be present and engage in a really engaged conversation. And hopefully that will be possible in the future. But now I just want to turn it over to Steve Dew, the Provost and Vice VP Academic, and Andrew Sharman, the VP of Facilities and Operations. And they're just going to give us a brief update on planning, COVID emergency planning for the fall 2020. And Andrew has been leading the public health response team. And of course, Steve Dew has been taking the lead on all academic matters as we plan for the fall term. So Steve, maybe I will turn it over to you and Andrew for a COVID update. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Of course, dealing with all of the complexities around transformations at the same time as we're dealing with a pandemic crisis makes life a little bit more complicated. But anyway, of course, all of our planning for going forward under the COVID response is constrained by the directives of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, whose office is telling us that physical distancing will be a facet of life for quite some time, even with the phased reemergence from the lockdown that we're starting to experience. As we continue to look ahead towards what activities on campus we may be able to welcome back next, it is of utmost importance that we continue to be mindful, gradual and methodical in our approach in order to meet our ultimate objectives of supporting safe and sustainable learning, living and working environments for our students, faculty, staff, and extended community in the context of the public health guidelines. But we are committed to creating in-person learning opportunities, especially for experiential activities such as labs, clinical learning, studio work, etc., and in programs where it is essential for instruction to occur in person, all of course subject to the public health directives. We are also cognizant of the importance of creating a quality student experience, a campus living experience, and ensuring that that is fulsome, even if some elements have to be online necessarily. So I know you're all eager to know what will be in person and what will continue to be delivered remotely. We are working as quickly as we can to determine this for you. I do ask for your patience as there are a number of complexities that are involved in making these decisions, and as soon as possible, we will let you know what we're able to move forward in an in-person environment. As you're probably aware, there is a process to secure exemptions for in-person classes and activities in the fall. These will be following CMOH guidelines, of course. And the review of the submissions will be done by the Planning Oversight Committee, and then final approval will occur either, well, through both myself and through Andrew's office as we look at how all of the pieces fit together at the big picture. We're hoping for that to be completed by June the 22nd. As we continue to look ahead towards what activities on campus we may be able to welcome back next, it is of utmost importance that we're mindful, methodical, and do this in a phased manner. For example, last week, starting on May the 25th, we began to welcome more researchers back onto our campuses as part of that phased return to activity. So far, it's going smoothly, and I think I'll segue to Andrew to give just a bit more detail about how that rolls out. So, Andrew.
Thanks, Steve. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of our research community for your patience as we gradually bring research teams back over time, and for adhering to the constraints in washrooms, hallways, elevators, lunchrooms, etc. To date, we've had 350 applications through the system, and 288 of those have been approved to resume on-campus research so far. Others are currently being reviewed. In the same way, I'd like to thank everybody else for your patience, particularly those who have not yet been invited back to one of our campuses. We understand that many of you are eager to get back to your offices and workspaces, and that some of you are working in less than ideal situations at home, in shared or multi-purpose spaces. But by being patient and waiting our turn to return to one of our campuses, and to hopefully to our regular routines, we're able to create a safer and more sustainable immediate future for our colleagues, our students, and our greater community. Please understand that our goal is solely to create a safe environment for everyone. And this has to be sustainable throughout this pandemic, particularly if we are hit with a second wave of the influenza in the fall. We continue to follow, as Steve said, the directives and the recently published guidelines of the Office of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And we're currently working on guidelines and processes to gradually bring some of our colleagues back into our diverse workspaces. And these will be issued later this week. By being careful now, we hope to be able to gradually welcome more employees back onto our campuses during the summer and fall months. If you have questions or concerns about your current working environment, whether on or off campus, I'd encourage you to discuss it with your advisor, your supervisor, or your human resources representative or student support services. Well, during this time, we can't expect that things will be the same as they always were. We can help each other explore new ways or tools to manage through the changes that we've had to put in place to keep everybody safe. Moving on to our residences, they will be available for incoming students in the fall of 2020 and the winter of 2021, based on the recent guidelines issued by Public Health. We still have just under 1,000 students in residence, and we're keeping them safe and healthy throughout this period. The team have also developed a number of accommodation packages for students arriving who may need self-isolation. And this also applies to students wishing to live in residence, as well as students, faculty and staff returning to Edmonton and Camrose from international locations who may not want to stay permanently in residence, but we will offer a service to all those returning. With that, I'll hand it over to Catherine for any questions.
Yeah, I think we have time for a couple of questions. And just to remind people that we continue to have updates on the COVID website. And so you can look at the FAQs there as well. First question was, what measures will be taken to ensure the quality of online courses?
Sure, let me take that one. So first off, we know that instructors need time to develop appropriate pedagogies for online delivery. And that the instructional approach taken for online needs to be adjusted. We didn't have this time in winter 2020. We pivoted that there in about 48 hours. But that is the primary reason why we made the decision a couple of weeks ago to focus primarily around online delivery for fall 2020 to give instructors the time over the summer to do that work, that development work. Second, we have some great resources in CTL, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and in faculties, and these have been fully mobilized to support the development of online teaching and learning measures. We're also investing in technology to give us more tools, more capacity for online delivery. And finally, we're working in partnership with other institutions and organizations, whether that's across Alberta, in Canada broadly, and around the world. And that's involved in sharing content, sharing techniques and approaches. So collectively, we expect to be able to deliver a high quality learning experience this fall. It's just going to be a little bit different than what we're traditionally used to delivering.
Thanks, Steve. What steps is the university taking to help preserve our tradition of campus life? How will you help clubs, fraternities, and other student organizations survive a full online semester?
Good question, and recognize that the formal learning exercise is not all that university life is about. That there are clubs and social opportunities and activities that are extracurricular that really helps make university such a successful and important experience for our learners. So we'll be doing a number of things in order to help build those. We haven't figured out all of the answers yet, but we do have a working group that is dealing with, for example, online orientation, working with the SU and the GSA. Residences will have online communities that they will work to be supporting and engaging with. And we are preparing guidance for clubs, fraternities, et cetera, to organize safe and effective events, either in person or online. So we'll be doing our best to make sure that this is not just a learning experience, but a fulsome environment that our students will enjoy and treasure for their lives.
Thanks. And we'll take one question. I think we have time for one more question that we can take from the questions that came in today. And that is, how will undergraduate tuition change in the upcoming online fall term 2020?
Good question. And we certainly recognize that students are in particular experiencing some tough financial situations, particularly with summer jobs being very, very difficult to find in the current set of constraints, and also the changes that have happened in provincial and federal budgets that make it more challenging for students. So starting from certainly understanding the challenges that students are facing financially. From a tuition perspective, our tuition levels were set in the springtime, and those are the tuition levels that we are rolling forward in the fall. We do feel that the learning experience that we will be deriving is going to be a high quality experience and value for students in their investment. Our costs to deliver online are actually higher than they are face-to-face, particularly given the development. And as we've heard already, the university is struggling on the financial side, but we recognize that we also need to put in place mechanisms for supporting students. And so we will have expanded tuition or financial aid opportunities for students. And that will be the piece around on the tuition side. In addition, there are mandatory non-instructional fees. Those we are looking at. We do recognize that those fees are to a large extent to cover services that support students. And those services at the very least will be changed in an online environment. So those are active discussions about what is the right mandatory non-instructional fee regime to be putting in place for the fall.
Thanks, Steve. I think now we'll turn to Bill for some closing remarks.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve and Andrew and Catherine. And I really want to thank all of you for tuning in today on our first university broadcast of this nature. I look forward to a broad process of consultation as we continue the discussion of restructuring at the University of Alberta. This is really only the beginning of that consultation. I regret that we didn't have time to get to more of your questions today, but we will be posting a frequently asked question list on the University of Alberta for Tomorrow website. And I encourage you to continue to send in your questions, your comments, your thoughts on how we should proceed as we go forward. And also today's video will be posted on the University of Alberta for Tomorrow website so that it will be available to anyone who wishes to view it. So as I say in closing, thank you for participating today. I very much look forward to continuing to work with all of you. And I think that will conclude our session for today. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.